Hello and welcome back to the Watford Way and another match preview against Bristol City at Vicarage Road on Saturday afternoon. And yeah, I'm really excited for this game. But as always, before I touch on Watford, we're going to touch on the opposition first. And we are playing Bristol City. I don't know how many of you guys watched the game, but Bristol City did actually play an FA Cup game. They're in the FA Cup against Sheffield United on Wednesday night. I watched the full game just because I was interested to see kind of how they played going forward, how they were defensively, and they were decent. And actually in the Championship, if you look at Bristol City, they're only 9 points off Watford. They currently sit in 10th place, which you might think, oh, they're not really having a great season, but they are only 9 points off of Watford. So there is quite, between the playoff places and the mid-table places, there's not really a huge gap in terms of points. So we're kind of having similar seasons in a way. But when I watched them last night anyway, they did look really, I won't say really good, but they looked decent against what is a Premier League side in Sheffield United. And Sheffield United were, going at them down the flanks quite a lot during that game, and they dealt with them relatively well. They did actually get a red card during the game, Bristol City, which I did find quite funny. And I did have to play, I think, the last 20 minutes or so with 10 men. But even then, they only lost 1-0. And going forward, in the first half especially, they did look really good and put in a few good patterns of play together. So that did concern me a little bit. But what I would say the saving graces from this game is they did have to play it with 10 men for about 20 minutes. They would be a little bit more tired than obviously Watford are, because Watford have had a week off. So that might work to Watford's benefit, or it might work to our detriment. You just never know in these kind of situations. But look, they're at the FA Cup now. They face Watford on Saturday, so it's going to be really interesting to see how we get on. But on Watford, and what I want to see from Watford, there's 3 players firstly that I want to mention that have to start the game. And I'm sure, if you don't agree with me on this point, I don't know what is going on in your head, because these players for me have to start every single game. Obviously rest them here and there, but pretty much every game these players should be starting for Watford at the moment, and that is João Pedro, Will Hughes and Philip Zinckernagel. Now, these are players that can offer us so much more than some of the players that are playing for us at the moment. You think of Andre Gray starting games. I know he came out and did that interview, to try and to try and apologise for the actions that he's done in the past few months and apologise for his poor run of form. But from what I've seen from him recently, even with that apology video that he did with the club, he just doesn't offer us enough at all going forward. And João Pedro, in his place, I think of Pedro's on the ball ability in terms of taking people on, his dribbling ability. He gets shots off from around the box where sometimes, if they can take a deflection, they can sometimes go in. And João Pedro, just in general, is a lot more creative. It's probably quite selfish as well, but it's generally a lot more creative than Andre Gray, and definitely offers us, a different outlet to what Gray does. Will Hughes, I think we all know what Will Hughes offers. Very tenacious in that midfield, also quite creative at times, but Chalobah at the moment, for me, again, isn't really playing up to the standard we need him to be. We've seen spits and spats of Chalobah this season where he has performed really well at a good level, but at the moment he's just not at that level. So I think Will Hughes has to start with someone else in the midfield, maybe a Cleverley or a Dan Gosling when he's fit. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out. And lastly, but certainly not least, it is Philip Zinckernagel. And we've all seen the stats from his previous club, and it's something ridiculous, some ridiculous stats. And he's up there with the best in Europe in terms of goals and assists combined. But he's not starting games for us at the moment, and I'm not too sure why Xisco isn't starting him. Now, in press conferences, he's said he's adapting to English football, but, how long does it take? How can you... My point back to Xisco would be this. How can someone adapt to English football if you're not going to play them, consistently? And what I mean by that is he's coming off the bench and he's getting 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here. How are you meant to adapt to a different country's league if you're only given 5 or 10 minutes in the game to make an impact? So Philip Zinckernagel has to start games. From what we've seen of him, he on the ball, he's absolutely superb. Passing ability is fantastic. But my one critique would be sometimes he does attempt a little bit like Bruno Fernandes. Maybe when the pass isn't on, he'll still try it, and ultimately you lose possession. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, that's only a very little critique I've got of him. So Philip Zinckernagel again has to start in his preferred position, out on the wing. Well, not on the wing, but at his previous club, he was played primarily out on the right-hand side. So if he was to start on the right, maybe you move Sarr over to the left and Pedro up top. I don't know what your thoughts on that are. And that's something that maybe I'd look at. I know Xisco wants to change the system, although we didn't see that in the last game, did we? So it's going to be really, really interesting to see. And yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about, really. I want to see them 3 players start. I think that them 3 players starting, for me, drastically increases our chances of winning the game. I think them 3 players should be starting for the rest of the season. I think João Pedro needs to stop being substituted, around 60 or 70 minutes for Andre Gray. I think João Pedro needs a full game to impact. João Pedro is only 19 years old, so, we're not substituting him for fatigue. He's not 36, 37 years old and he can barely run around. He's 19 years old. He played in Brazil. He can cope playing 90 minutes of football. So João Pedro definitely needs to start all of our games. And yeah, I'm really, really excited to see how this game pans out. This has been a little bit of a rant rather than a preview, but I hope you understand my frustrations at us not starting. We've got really, really talented players at Watford, and for us not to start them in games or play them for long enough in games to make an impact, it's a real, real shame. So, as I said, if Xisco doesn't start them 3 players, then I'm going to be asking questions because, I don't know if you've seen our recent video, should Xisco leave Watford or not? I ultimately think that he should, but watch that video and you'll see my reasonings for that. I won't go into that now, but from what I've seen of Xisco so far, it's just not been good enough. And it's such a shame that I'm having to say that because I hate it. I hate being the club that sacks managers, when the going gets tough. But I don't know what it is with Xisco. I just don't think it can work, and it's a real, real shame for me to say that. But I just don't think it can. So yeah. Bit sad, but bit of a sad way to end the video, but there you go. Hopefully Xisco can prove me wrong and we'll get a really, really comfortable win against Bristol City on Saturday, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. So thank you very much for watching. Really do appreciate your support on the channel so far. It's really, really it's going really well lately actually, so I really do appreciate that. Make sure to hit the subscribe button as well, as that does help me out. Leave a like on the video and let me know your thoughts on the match in the comments below. And what I said earlier, would you start Pedro, Hughes, Zinckernagel in the same team? Because I personally would, because I think it makes this a much, much better outfit. So again, thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back with a match reaction after the Bristol City game. Bye bye.